Welcome to the Quality of Service Setup video demonstration. This video shows how to set up host I/O limit policies to provision storage resources using the Unisphere user interface. This demo also shows the performance results with the I/O limits applied to the block storage resources from both the host perspective and the Unisphere interface. First, let's check if the host I/O limits feature is enabled and licensed in our Unity system. We do that by opening the System Global Settings window and checking on the License Management window for the Quality of Service license. And now we can close the window. Now let's select the Performance option under the System section and navigate to the Host I/O Limits page. Observe that from this page we can launch the Host I/O Limits page of the System Global Settings window. Note that the feature is active for this system, and that all host I/O limit policies applied to the storage resources can be paused from here. In our test environment, we're using 4 LUNs. 3 of them are part of a consistency group. And these 4 LUNs are accessed by a Windows 2012 server through fiber channel connectivity. Back to the Host I/O Limits page, we are going to create a policy. By clicking on the Add sign, we open the Create Host I/O Limit wizard. On the first step, we name the policy Platinum Policy and set the limits to a maximum of 2,000 I/Os per second and the maximum consumed bandwidth to 20,480 kilobytes per second, and we set it as a shared policy. On the second step, we are selecting the 3 consistency group LUNs to be associated with the policy. If snapshots were created for a LUN or consistency group, they would be listed in this page and could be associated with the I/O limit that has been created. We can now review the configuration on the summary page and click Finish to commit the changes. The results page shows the status of the performed operation, and we can close the window once the operation is complete. The new policy will be added to the list. For the purposes of this demonstration, we have created 2 other policies. We named the second policy Gold Policy and set the throughput to a maximum of 1,000 IOPS and the bandwidth to a maximum of 11 megabytes per second. The third policy is called Silver Policy with a maximum throughput of 800 IOPS and a maximum bandwidth of 9,000 kilobytes per second. Both the policies are set not to be shared with other storage resources, and none of them were associated with any storage resources or snapshots. In the host environment, PowerPath and I/O Meter will be used to demonstrate the enforced policies from the host perspective. We can see the 4 LUNs created in the Unity system initialized and formatted with a drive letter. From the PowerPath administration console, we can monitor the paths for the 4 disks presented to the host and verify the serviced I/O. In I/O Meter, we have 4 disk targets, associated each with 1 worker and a number of 32 outstanding I/Os per target. We are running 8 kilobytes random mix of 70% writes, 30% reads in the background for the tests. And we have set the frequency to 1 second for the results display. So let's start the test and observe the I/O serviced to the disks. We now have roughly between 33 and 35,000 IOPS serviced to the 4 target disks. And we can see from the PowerPath console the amount of IOPS on each disk. Back to Unisphere, we're going to associate one of the I/O limit policies with Windows 1 LUN 0. First, let's change the page update frequency to real time. By hovering the mouse over the graphic, it is possible to check the amount of bandwidth and throughput for the storage resource. Observe that there are no limits associated with the LUN at this time. Now let's apply the Silver Policy to this storage resource. Remember that this policy limits host access to a maximum of 800 IOPS and a maximum of 9,000 kilobytes per second. Once we hit the Apply button, we can see the policy has been enforced. Real time shows the output in 5 seconds update frequency. Observe that both bandwidth and throughput are within the enforced limits. Now let's change the host I/O limit policy to the Gold Policy. Remember that this policy limits host access to a maximum of 1,000 IOPS and a maximum of 11,000 kilobytes per second. Observe that both bandwidth and throughput are within the enforced limits. From the host perspective, we can see that the IOs to Win1 LUN0 are below the limit of 1,000 IOPS and 11 megabytes per second. Let's associate the Platinum policy with Windows 1 LUN0. The Platinum policy is the one shared with the 3 consistency group LUNs. Verify that the I/O to all the LUNs are within the limits, but since the policy is shared, Win1 LUN0 is not using the full limit. From the host perspective, we can see that the IOs to Win1 LUN0 are even more restricted because the host I/O limit policy is shared with the other LUNs. This concludes the Quality of Service video demo.